Good morning, everybody. Chester ARP Church Devotional Podcast. Genesis 20 on tap. Story of Sarah, Abimelech, and Abraham. Let's go.
Gives me grace for every trial. Feeds me with the living bread.
All right, we're back here in Genesis chapter 20 this morning as we read God's Word. We were off yesterday, but back today. Verse 1 of Genesis 20. From there, Abraham traveled to the region of Negev and settled between Kadesh and Shur. While he was staying in Gerar, Abram said about his wife Sarah, "She is my sister." So King Abimelech of Gerar had Sarah brought to him. But God came to Abimelech in a dream by night and said to him, "You are about to die because of the woman you have taken, for she is married." Now Abimelech had not approached her, so he said, "Lord, would you destroy a nation even though it is innocent? Didn't he himself say to me, 'She is my sister,' and she herself say to me, 'He is my brother'? I did this with a clear conscience and with clean hands." Then God said to him in the dream, "Yes, I know that you did it with a clear conscience. I have also kept you from sinning against me. Therefore I have not let her touch you or you touch her. Now return the man's wife, for he is a prophet, and he will pray for you, and you will live. But if you do not return her, know that you will certainly die, you and all who are yours." Early in the morning, Abimelech got up, called his servants together, and personally told them to take all these things, and the men were terrified. Then Abimelech called Abraham in and said to him, "What have you done to us? How did I sin against you that you have brought such an enormous guilt on me and on my kingdom? You have done things to me that should never ever be done." Abimelech asked Abraham also, "What made you do this?" Abraham replied, "I thought, there is absolutely no fear of God in this place. They will kill me because of my wife. Besides, she is really my sister, the daughter of my father, though not the daughter of my mother, and she became my wife. So when God had me wander from my father's house, I said to her, 'Show your loyalty to me wherever we go, and say he is my brother.' Then Abimelech took flocks and herds and male and female slaves and gave them to Abraham and returned his wife Sarah to him. Abimelech said, 'Look, my land is before you. Settle wherever you want.' And he said to Sarah, 'Look, I am giving your brother 1,000 pieces of silver. It is a verification of your honor. To all who are with you, you are fully vindicated.' Then Abraham prayed to God, and God healed Abimelech, his wife, and his female slaves, so that they could bear children. For the Lord had completely closed all the wombs of Abimelech's household on account of Sarah, Abraham's wife." Now, this is a wild story. Several things about it I want to point out. First of all, Sarah and Abraham concoct this plan, and Abraham tells Sarah, "You've got to tell Abimelech that you are my sister when you're really my wife." Why do they do this? Well, they're afraid. They're afraid of what Abimelech may do to them. They're afraid of what may happen to them. They're afraid of what may happen to Sarah. And so they create this plot. Now, they've done this before. They did it in Egypt in Genesis 13, I think. And there Abraham had a similar experience, and he was called on the carpet by the Pharaoh. Abraham is returning to his sin. That's what we do. We often return to sins that we have committed. So if you have a sin pattern in your life, what I mean by that is if there are sins in your life that you have dealt with and done throughout your life, especially your early stages in life, chances are very high that that pattern is going to show back up when you fall out of, when you tire, or when you get exhausted, or when you struggle, when you're following Christ and you lose your focus or whatever. Chances are you're going to have similar sin patterns throughout your entire life. Abraham returns to this sin. He is driven to return to this sin because he is afraid. Abraham has been called by God out of the land of the Ur of the Chaldeans. He's been led by God through the wilderness. He's been given a place in Canaan. He has received the promise of God. He has seen the promise of God come to fruition in the birth of Isaac. And yet, all the while, he is still struggling with sin. Why is he doing that? Well, it's just indicative of our sin nature, our sin capacity. We're going to continue to do that. Here's one of the greatest men of the Old Testament. He believed God. It was credited to him as righteousness. He did what most of us would never want to do. He got up and left his homeland, went and followed God to a land, and he dealt with many hardships, but yet he trusted God and his promise enough to go and follow him. But we see constantly that Abraham falls into these sin patterns and fails to trust the Lord in the midst of his fear. He's afraid. That's why he's doing what he's doing. The second thing I'll note about this is that God protects Abimelech. Abimelech acts in good conscience. Abimelech is truly a victim of Abraham's sin here. He acts in good conscience. And God says to Abimelech, I know you did it in good conscience. You didn't know she was married. You didn't know that she was married to Abraham. You didn't know anything about her, and you were working off of the statement that they gave you. You took them at their word. And I have kept you from sinning against her and against Abraham and against me. God had kept Abimelech from sinning, and I think that's important. There are many times in your life, you may not know it, you probably don't know it, when God has protected you and kept you from sinning against him and other people by the circumstances of your life. In this particular case, maybe he was tired, maybe he was busy, maybe he was at war, maybe there was another woman, another wife that he fancied more at that moment, and he had never consummated that marriage with Sarah. And so therefore he had never known her sexually and did not commit that sin against God, against Sarah, and against Abraham, because God in his grace had protected Abimelech. So we see God in his grace protecting and forgiving and being gracious. We also see God in his grace being the one who has the opportunity to interact with Abimelech and build that relationship. We also see Abraham returning to that same sin pattern over and over and over again. And yet God is full of grace and mercy to forgive him, but it doesn't excuse Abraham. I'm going to end there today. You guys have a great day. God bless you. I'll see you tomorrow.
You carry me close to your heart.